Right. All right, so let's get started. So what we're going to talk through today, obviously Chipotle is, it's been already in the news for probably a few weeks now, as your first national spot here in the Super Bowl. Can a burrito change the world? So go probably just around the horn really quick and do some intros and roles and responsibilities. Really excited that we have both the brand side and the creative side here for this conversation. So I can start. My name is Alex. I run the national sales team here for Samba in the US. We are a global TV data and analytics company. And so this is a topic that is very top of mind for us. We're usually doing quite a bit of analyses the Monday following the Super Bowl. So for any of you who are looking for some quick hits on any data around viewership and a number of kind of rankings of the different ads that are running, stay tuned for Monday morning. You guys can find that on our Twitter handle, and hopefully some good metrics for you guys here on the Chipotle side. But Stephanie, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. My name is Stephanie Perdue, and I'm the VP of Brand Marketing at Chipotle. My career has really spanned entertainment and the restaurant industry. I've been in the restaurant industry about 17 plus years. I joined Chipotle in 2018, and I'm super excited to launch our first Super Bowl spot this Sunday.
And yeah, the most succinct introduction I can give you is I'm Gus, and I make ads for Chipotle. I'm a creative director at Venables Bell and Partners, which is a independent creative agency based in San Francisco. Obviously, Chipotle is one of our most important clients. I've been working on the brand for the last 12 months, so somewhat of a baptism of fire joining just pre-pandemic. But I sort of, oversee, conceive, and create a whole bunch of different advertising communications and messaging for the Chipotle brand, including their first ever Super Bowl commercial, which is obviously why we're all here today.
Fantastic. So let's start with the obvious question, I guess, which is, Chipotle's been a local advertiser for a long time, and over the years has kind of continued to go more national. And this kind of feels like the crescendo of it doesn't get much more of a national marketing effort than the Super Bowl. As we've seen, obviously, a pretty big shift in the brands over the years, and particularly this year set to air. How did you guys come to the decision just to advertise during the Super Bowl, and why this year?
Yeah, like Alex, just like you mentioned, I think we made a shift in 2018 to move our marketing from like a local decentralized strategy to a national strategy. And what we've learned along the way is, people feel really good about eating Chipotle because of their mission and their purpose to cultivate a better world through food with integrity. But as we went deeper, I think there's still an opportunity to emotionally connect with that purpose, to really understand what food with integrity means. And at Chipotle, that's all about, real ingredients that are unprocessed and responsibly sourced. And so as we thought about it over the last year, it's like, what better place than the Super Bowl to really put that purpose front and center, to really, an audience that's leaning in, that's engaged, that's, just watching the ads just as how they are watching the game. And so for us, it was about, really amplifying our purpose through the Super Bowl.
I think also, Stephanie, I feel like we sort of as a collective team recognized, and it's almost at a more emotional level, but recognized this need for brands like Chipotle to be putting kind of optimistic messages out into the world. And so just from a timing perspective and, what the last 12 months has been for everyone not just in the US, but on a global scale, the timing also just felt really right for Chipotle to step onto the biggest stage with an optimistic message, with a purpose-led message. And so I think, as a creative director, I'm driven more by my emotions in a way. And I think that was part of it. I think I felt like instinctively the team just thought this is the moment is right for the brand,
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think, from the context that I shared from the brand's perspective, but if you think about the pandemic and how our priorities have changed, and you're really kind of, as someone, now, living through it, is like you're putting your priorities, you're shifting them in a different way, and you really want more substance. You want to see brands that are making more of an impact. And I think more than ever, we're looking to see how can we make that progress in the future. And I think that's something that's really nice, and how it connects to this ad.
Yeah, and can you talk about, Stephanie? I know the digital transformation the pandemic has forced you guys to kind of accelerate, right? In terms of what some of the efforts were pre and currently, what they exist as today. I know probably there was a height of the pandemic max out of online ordering, but curious how you think about that in the current climate with especially with advertisers who are thinking, especially I should say historically national advertisers who are thinking about local level messaging at scale. Have you guys toyed with that idea as well, as you've thought about that the different impact in different markets, kind of DMAs opening and closing, obviously, and managing the pandemic at a state level?
Totally. I think the pandemic had such a huge impact on the restaurant industry. We went overnight last March from operating in physical and digital channels to at least for April and May, there was this basically like, your dining room's going to close. You got to shift all to digital channels, which, you couldn't have a bigger consumer shift or business shift. Luckily for Chipotle, we were heavily invested in driving digital to begin with. So digital was about 20% of our business pre-pandemic. And with our shift into marketing, into digital channels, media, really changing the message, the tone, the activations to be more virtual, to really highlight digital ordering, we're now sitting at about half of our businesses in digital channels. So yeah, we had to radically change everything in the past year. And for us, it's really worked out because we really have a customer that's highly engaged on their phone and really loves that kind of seamless ordering process. But yeah, it's definitely been a huge shift. And I think it's something that's helped Chipotle leapfrog, maybe where we would have been in 3 years, we're here now.
Sure. So I think we have the actual spot ready to be queued up. I'm not sure if we can get that going on the brand innovator side.
What if this could change the world?
A burrito.
Yeah.
You are so weird.
It could. It could change how we plant things, water things, grow things, pick things, move things, and transportation things.
What? That's not a thing.
It could make our farmers happier, more organic, more real, more soil helping, less carbon emitting, and world changing.
Hey, are you still talking?
Awesome. So Gus, I think this is a great question for you. We, and Stephanie already mentioned kind of the food with integrity slogan that you guys have had for quite a while, and obviously the purpose-driven message behind that. Gus, how did you come up with the concept here, and how do you think about striking the right tone? Especially when we talk about Super Bowl spots often having either the tongue-in-cheek messaging, the more serious messaging that seems to have happened in the last few years as well, as more of kind of the heartfelt kind of purpose-driven side here. How did you guys arrive at this kind of concept?
Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of knew from the outset that we certainly wanted to lean into with our purpose, food with integrity, how Chipotle, is driven to cultivating a better world. But I think also we sort of recognized really early on that we wanted to talk about the future. So we're also bogged down in the moment, and there's so much happening in the world that we really wanted to turn our attention to what we're doing today to transform and make the world or make the future a better place, and critically make the focus on the potential positive impact that Chipotle can have in terms of the way they do their business. But there's a sort of that in and of itself sort of presents this inherent challenge, because a lot of people in reality, Chipotle's been around for 27-ish years, And so there's a certain portion of people who know and love Chipotle really just as a brand or a company who makes really great tasting burritos and guacamole. They don't necessarily look at Chipotle as a brand who is changing the world or changing the future of food. And so really what we had to do in a way was sort of, on one hand, you've got that audience, and on the other, we have this brief and desire to talk about something that's much more sort of elevated and lofty in a way, in terms of, how we're changing the world. And so really the ad itself and the solution to that problem became about reconciling the tension between those two things. And not to simplify it too much, but we did that by simply asking a question almost in a disarmingly direct way: can a burrito change the world? Because it's the sort of question that if a brand came out and said that, a consumer would ask back at us, like, is that actually a thing? And so we took that sort of point of view through a child's perspective as well, wrapping it in that right kind of storytelling to put that question out to our audience, but then also authentically answer that question and demonstrate the things that we're practically doing. It's not just a, big and lofty kind of vision statement that we want to change the world, but actually come down to brass tacks. What are we doing in our business and the way we grow our food that helps to grow the future? And so that was sort of, the thought process a little bit. Once you have wrapped your head around the strategy and the pieces of the puzzle, often and hopefully the execution becomes pretty self-evident. And it did in this case. It sort of fell out of the creative and communication problem that we had in our hands.
Definitely. And I think the ad also helps you start thinking about like where does our food come from, right? And I think as we think about the younger generations and the questions they're asking, and the change they want to see in the world, I think it really connects into what's happening in culture right now and what we expect out of the future. And I think at Chipotle, we spend a lot of time thinking about that, and if we don't have the young farmers coming in to the agricultural industry and really championing these food with integrity standards, we're not going to make the progress we want to see. And so that's what I think we can all relate to, the curiosity and the wonderment of a kid imagining, a better outcome.
Yeah, and obviously there's been plenty of research that's been done over kind of the purpose-driven marketing that Gen Z and millennials tend to flock to. Do you subscribe to that notion that that's really just for kind of the 18 to 34-year-olds or younger generations, or do you feel like that purpose-driven marketing is kind of catching on with all kind of demographics?
Yeah, I think, for us at Chipotle, I think it's something that we believe that's relevant to every generation. It's something that our founder 27 years ago based the entire brand on. And so, I think the context of what that means and what the action is, and I think that changes, as time goes on. But I think the spirit of, having an impact and making changes, whether they're big or small, it all adds up to something and that forward progress. And I think that's what we hope that the spot helps elicit.
I think that's, as a creative director, you want to be working on brands that have an inherent authenticity to them, that you're not just, putting a veneer on top of their organization or their product and pretending like it's awesome. And I think that's one of the incredible things or opportunities about working on a brand like Chipotle, as Stephanie has said. This isn't, the brand being purpose-led isn't a trend for them. They're not jumping on the back of, oh, well, millennials and Gen Z love this stuff, so we better do it. It was foundational to the inception of the organization 27 years ago. So it makes, from a creative perspective, it makes it a lot easier to tell those stories when you kind of know that it's very deeply ingrained in the organization. It's not just the brand, it is the company and the operation itself.
And I think people are looking to connect to values more than they ever have before. What the brand stands for is I think even more important than what they're selling.
Exactly. And it didn't feel in any way like it was inauthentic. It felt like a natural, progression of the message that, to your point, Stephanie, has been in market for a long time, which is obviously great. We can give you credit for being ahead of your time in that regard. So Gus, how did production work for this? Did you guys run into a ton of challenges in the pandemic?
Yeah, I'll tell you the biggest challenge is when we go, is the client happy? And it's like, well, they're saying they're happy, but I can't see their face because it's behind a mask. So we'll just have to take their word for it. Look, I think, we found there's a whole bunch of brands, putting advertising onto the Super Bowl this year, and we all probably found ourselves in quite similar situations where you're having to create contingencies on contingencies because there's, rolling lockdowns or restrictions happening here and there. And so you go into the process with the full intent that it's all just going to go really smoothly, but you also know that the rug could get pulled out from you at any point because things have been so constantly fluctuating over the last 12 months. I think, I certainly heard some of this conversation in the previous chat as well. I think one of the interesting things is it's certainly, all of the restrictions have, created an opportunity or opened the aperture for different ways of making things, but particularly with film production. Is it better than where we were? I don't know. I don't know whether it is, but it's certainly going to inform the future. It's going to inform the way we can dial in remotely. Look at a very close friend of mine, as we speak, is sitting in a hotel room in Los Angeles, an Australian guy sitting in a hotel in Los Angeles, directing a commercial in London. And so it's like that, and I don't know whether he's enjoying that process exactly, but it's interesting, right? That's possible now, and people's imagination are open to different ways of doing things. I think we were pretty lucky, we despite all the, rigorous COVID protocols that were applied to process and, getting tested and masking and social distancing and all the correct things that happened around the process, we were able to shoot on real farms that were real, Chipotle suppliers, because you're always worried, because of the authenticity of the Chipotle brand, we hold ourselves to a very high standard of realness. And that means, like, if we're shooting in a farm, we kind of want it to be a real farm that actually has a relationship with Chipotle. And we were really fortunate that despite all the restrictions, we were able to kind of achieve that and do it the way we wanted to do it as well. So look, it wasn't easy. It wasn't necessarily as fun as it normally is, but we're really proud that we were able to navigate that, those restrictions and really come out with an uncompromised product in many ways.
Yeah, and the messaging obviously is right on brand with Stephanie, what you alluded to earlier with just kind of the challenges for farming that exist in today's day and age. So can you touch on kind of what the Young Farmers, the National Young Farmers Coalition is, and why that's important to the brand, and how that's a part of this campaign as well?
Definitely. I mean, I think it's simple, like, because we really champion real ingredients that we source direct from farmers, like bringing in whole avocados every day, chopping romaine lettuce, bringing in jalapenos and red onions, and making the food fresh every day, because that is Chipotle. The role of the farmer is so integral to our success. And so I think a lot of people don't realize that, the average age of the farmer is 59 years old. And so that next generation isn't coming into the farming industry. And the next generation has a lot of amazing ideas when it comes to technology, when it comes to, like we said, having like a different mindset for the future. And so we really saw, since 2018, a real important, mission is to get younger farmers into the industry. And the reason they're not doing it is because there's a whole bunch of barriers, right? Like access to land and cost and, college debt and, getting all this equipment. And so we partnered with the National Young Farmers Coalition in 2019 to develop programs to get young farmers onto a farm and to get started. And also to really help change the face of farming, really broadening the diversity of the type of farmers that are in the mix, and ones that really champion our food with integrity standards. So with the Super Bowl ad that we announced 2 weeks ago, we also made a commitment over the next 5 years as Chipotle to donate $5 million to driving the success of young farmers, and wanted to get consumers in to make an impact as well. So on Super Bowl Sunday, consumers get $0 delivery, which is great. So you can get Chipotle delivered to your house for $0. And also those deliveries make an impact because $1 from every delivery order from Chipotle is going to go to young farmers. And that was important for us because we wanted to really kind of have an impact on the biggest delivery day of the year, which is Super Bowl.
And also demonstrate that a burrito can change the world as well. It's like putting it through putting it into people's hands, manifesting that question and that idea in a really tangible way.
Yeah, and Stephanie, so you've made the investment in the TV spot, right? How do you then think about the different kind of paid, owned, earned channels to in tandem kind of get some of that messaging out around, delivery and donation?
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously I think we went forward and released early and, really to drive the earned and owned impressions. We're lucky we've got over 19 million people in our loyalty program. So we premiered the spot with our loyalty program, showing them extended cuts and et cetera. And because our digital ecosystem is so strong, we're driving that awareness of that message of your impact of your delivery order on Sunday as well through digital and social. So it's not just the Super Bowl spot, it's also the rest of the campaign. And I think, and it's cool that we can make an impact just even beyond awareness, which is like just such a dream as a marketer.
Sure. And then, as far as measuring success, right? We've got a number of people to answer to when we make these kinds of decisions. So, and I always kind of, just the dichotomy of, working with the creative side as well as kind of reporting up into, the CFO. How do you think about the different ways to, and I guess for this particular initiative, dictate what success looks like for obviously a number of different kind of offshoots, whether it's the donation efforts, whether it's sales. How do you think about that?
Totally. I think, and I'm sure Gus has a different answer too, so it'd be good to hear from him. But I think for me, I think it's awareness of Chipotle's purpose and emotionally connecting to it. I think that's the opportunity we have here with the great storytelling, with the great ad concept that Venables has come up with. And so I'd really like to see us move the needle there. You can't get much bigger than the Super Bowl. I think also just raising awareness of the importance of getting young farmers into the industry, I think is a really important outcome. And then hopefully raising a lot of money for young farmers.
My metric for success is a lot less scientific. I sporadically send my commercials to my harshest critic, which is my mother, and I ask her what she thinks of it, and she normally hates my work just because she just isn't interested, and she quite likes this one, so I'd call that a win. But yeah, I mean, I think Stephanie's right. One thing also we were very cognizant of was we also wanted to make a commercial that the organization was proud of, and I think there's how we metrically, how we quantify that, I'm not entirely sure, but I think anecdotally, Stephanie and team will certainly get a good impression from inside the organization. They employ a lot of people. They have a lot of people who are engaged in the brand. And I think that's a critical piece as well. We want the organization rallying around it and feeling proud of the message and the right kind of message that we're putting out into the world, and doing it our way as well. So I think that's a really important part.
Definitely. I think we talked about connecting values and really showing the values of Chipotle, and that is so important from our employee base, because you work for a company typically because you believe in what they're doing. And so it definitely was We premiered it with our employee base. It definitely was a great rallying cry, and for them to be inspired, as well as, like, what they do every day matters.
Yeah, the internal capital is a huge piece of that, I have to imagine too. And so, what does the next step look like after you debut a spot like this? And as you think about the surrounding messaging, what do the coming kind of weeks and months afterwards look like for follow-ups?
I think the campaign's not over, and that's something that, like, to your point, Alex, it's something that is evergreen to us. It is our mission. So we'll continue to look for new opportunities to drive awareness of that. And I think asking Gus and team for chapter 2.
Well, that's that's the scary thing, isn't it? You finish the first Super Bowl commercial and it's like, okay, what are we doing next year? It's like, can we just have a break for 1 second, please? For sure. No, I mean, look, we're feeling really good about the work and the impact and how it's being received. Even, in the lead up to the game itself, it's been incredible. The earned reach it's got, just the number of people who have viewed it on YouTube alone, through organic has been incredible. And so, yeah, we're certainly enthused and excited about the potential of coming back to the game in 2022 for sure.
I think when you have a message that's true to your brand, it's easy to activate afterwards, right? Because it is consistent, and you think about those food with integrity standards, like how do we continue to make more progress? We launched what we call a real food print, which is basically an environmental tracker on our app. So every time you order from Chipotle, you get to understand, basically what you did from water savings, less carbon in the atmosphere. And it's basically computing just the environmental savings you get from ordering Chipotle versus conventional ingredients. And I think that's just one example of a digital activation, but you can see how the consistent thread in terms of when you have a single-minded purpose and a mission, that it's not something that lives on Sunday only. It's something that lives every day for us. And we'll continue to find new ways to really get consumers to engage with that, and emotionally connect to it.
It also reinforces the need for, executionally, the spot not to just be a single hit and, a single standalone ad that is just pandering to getting a laugh or, winning that, game off the field in an advertising sense. Asking that question, can a burrito change the world? It's sort of like everything we do from now on is going to be an answer to that question. And the real food print, as Stephanie said, is a really great example of that. Can a burrito change the world? Well, here's a measurable way of determining that for yourself.
I think that's something that brands, I think, are seeing, is like, it's not just saying, it's doing. And also, I think consumers want that accountability, and how can they help on that mission as well. So those are all things we're thinking about as we're looking at, how to do this in new ways for the rest of the year.
Right. And as I think about just obviously a lot of the changes that we've seen in messaging from a lot of brands to be more, call it compassionate, or, really kind of, tug at the emotional heartstrings that obviously a lot of people have felt during the pandemic. Do you feel like, Stephanie, there's a way to kind of continue that equity through, even just sharing results of how much you've been able to raise, or anything following up to kind of just show how well that's worked to the public, or even just internally your team members?
Definitely. We'll go in and we'll raise this money, and we've committed $5 million like we talked about, and we're going to generate a new round of seed grants for young farmers. And then we'll tell those stories of, how those young farmers are making a difference. When you hear about them and you hear about what they're trying to do, it's inspiring. So yeah, for sure. I think it has a long tail. And I think, the work we can continue to do with our network of suppliers, to whether it's transition land to organic, those are all things that, again, are all offshoots of what this spot really talks about.
Sure. And last question before I know we're up against it with Q&A, is certainly, I think a little selfishly, is it's near and dear to our business as we think about, the different ways to measure effectiveness behaviorally or attitudinally. Sounds like the awareness piece and really the messaging is much more the focus here. Is there any kind of a look at brand perception or brand health or sentiment that you look at maybe pre and post, or is it more just in general looking at more of the awareness type metrics?
Yeah, no, great question. We definitely look at equity metrics as well. We know we've correlated some equity metrics that we feel as an organization are important to us that go back to when the founder established the company, and how those correlate to transactions. And we actually see a really strong correlation when we're true to our brand, when we're talking about real food that's unprocessed and responsibly raised, that differentiates us. We see we measure that versus competitors, and we see that's where Chipotle has the advantage. And you can, on a quarterly basis, measure that growth over time. So that's definitely something we're looking at, in addition to just attitudinal metrics around, like I talked about, how consumers are connecting into that purpose. But yeah, it's definitely multifaceted, from understanding the transactions that are going into our restaurant after you do a Super Bowl activation, to more of the longer term equity drivers.
All right, it looks like we've got one question so far. So what went into the decision to release the ad before Sunday? I feel like this has been a trend for maybe the last few years, but how do you guys evaluate either the timing of exactly when to release it, or if you should or should not?
Yeah, we definitely had a lot of discussion about it. I think every brand's different. I think some brands have a commercial where they're, teasing makes sense. In our assertion, like, to us, like, teasing this ad really didn't make sense at all. And I think for us, it was more about driving, as many views as possible to watch the ad. And I think also having some space to talk about this larger commitment we're making, and doing more of the digital activation around it, to support the campaign, I think those were really the kind of the key drivers for us in releasing early. But I think we live in a different world where it's not appointment viewing anymore. Yes, we get that on Super Bowl, which is why we're advertising in Super Bowl, why everyone does. But I think we know now the shifts in consumer behavior when it's consuming media, and I think you got really a big dichotomy from the 18-year-old to the 50-year-old. And I think for us, it's about maximizing all those channels, and then also just crafting the message to certain audiences. So, releasing early allowed us to talk to those 19 million loyalty members in a way that's personal to them, versus just seeing it for the first time on Super Bowl. So we thought about different audiences, we thought about maximizing viewership, and we thought about how we could get more awareness on this larger campaign that's underpinning the spot.
I think also there's an element, Stephanie, right, of it, like, rather than, because the teaser is often so predicated on the advertising itself, like the actual physical ad, as distinct from the message or the brand or the purpose of the ad existing in the world. It becomes entertainment in its own right, which is great and fantastic. But we recognized the more important story to tell was what is happening around the central message, rather than everyone look at our ad. Obviously we want people to love the ad and like the ad and for it to resonate, but it becomes about the bigger story. It becomes about the brand, rather than just a self-referential piece of entertainment, which again works for some brands. And Super Bowl's a time and a place when, there is an expectation of that. But, Chipotle has always been a brand that sort of run its own race and wanted to do things their way. And so that's part of it, I think, as well, giving us the space and opportunity to talk about the bigger story, not just the piece of advertising. Which is hard for me to say as the creative director, because I do care about the ad a lot.
Well, Well, how do you feel about that phenomena, Gus, around ads kind of being released early over the last, call it 5 maybe or more years? Does that make your job any more strenuous or anxious in the moments leading up to it?
Well, not really. I mean, teasers are easy to make because you don't have to really say anything. It's sort of like you're just dangling a little bit of a carrot. Look, I think again, it depends on the executional nature of the. Apologies, I have a truck passing by my window. It depends on the executional nature of the commercial as well and what you're teasing. Often teasers are really leaning into, oh, we have a famous celebrity, we have a very expensive song in our commercial. And so the pop cultural entertainment factor of it becomes a more important component. But again, we were very cognizant from a tonal perspective that we didn't necessarily want to lean into all of those tropes. We wanted, again, to tell our story our way and make the focus of our commercial the story at the heart of it rather than the commercial itself. And so, as Stephanie said, it felt right for us to release the whole thing rather than tease it in a traditional way.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, we're up against maybe a couple more minutes left, so I guess I'll ask the same question: is who do you guys have in the game?
Oh, I love this quarterback matchup for sure. I think I respect the fact that Tom Brady's doing it again, but I'm rooting for the newbie. I'm rooting for Mahomes. So yeah, Kansas City.
If you didn't notice, I'm Australian. So really, do I have any idea what the hell I'm talking about? I'm going to say the Buccaneers though, because I'm pretty sure Chris Brandt, CMO of Chipotle, is going for the Buccaneers. So I'm just going to carry some favour there, I think, and align with Chris. What do you think, Stephanie?
A nice agency move. That was predictable.
Yes. Probably smart, and this will probably do me no favors nationally speaking. But as a New Englander, born and raised in New Hampshire, you can probably guess who I would be going for.
Yeah.
I think we've got Steve back here
Yeah. So thank you guys. That was great. I have a question or two as well, but Alex, thank you. And so. I guess this is both for Stephanie and Gus, but as this year we've seen a lot of creative related to the times that we're living in, and as we sort of inch our way back to what hopefully will be a little bit more normal, how do you guys think about re-engaging your consumers in what hopefully will be a very pre-pandemic, if you will, but a post-pandemic campaign messaging? How do you start to re-engage that consumer, and have you thought about what type of messaging you'll be using to do that?
Yeah, I think, for us, early on in the pandemic, what we learned is that our consumers needed access to Chipotle. And that was kind of what we were solving for by moving into the digital space and really talking about how easy it is to order Chipotle. But then we also, as you saw this outpouring of support for healthcare heroes, and thinking about, you saw articles about food being wasted and that kind of thing on farms, and the trouble that farmers were having. We saw an opportunity to lean into our purpose, and so I think for us, our purpose means more than ever. And I think what we heard from customers is they want to see brands making more of an impact in their communities. Locally, I think you see that as a theme in the Super Bowl this year about supporting local businesses. And, I think Chipotle is like the restaurant that supports local, more than anyone in the category. And so, for us, I think doubling down on the purpose is a post-pandemic trend. And lucky for us, that purpose has been unchanged. So I think that's one of the things that I see and I'm paying attention to, and I think continues to be relevant.
I think in context to the Super Bowl commercial itself as well, I think, Stephanie, your direction to us creatively really early on in the process is tell a story and put a message out in the world that could have been true for the brand 27 years ago and will still be true for the brand in 27 years. And so yes, it has to be appropriate and responsible in context to what's happening in the world, but we didn't want it to feel opportunistic or tactical in that sense, where it was, you know, exploiting the tone of the world. It's really just us staying true to our message and continuing to put that optimistic story out into the world.
And I have one more. This is just a kind of a